What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Phenomenal Motivation. This week's theme is to be accountable. Why do I say that? Look, guys, I never tell people that I was somebody that people didn't believe in, that people didn't think could become something. People been saying this since I was a kid, 4 or 5 years old. So I'm not the person that says that I was to screw up or to mess up or anything like that. I was a person that people always believed in, but I wasn't the right person. I wasn't accountable to my actions. I didn't take ownership and be like, Jeremiah's gonna be great. Jeremiah's gonna be phenomenal. I never made that decision for myself that I was gonna be that person. But once I did, everything took off on me. But it don't mean I ain't had challenges throughout the way that I've had to face that and still be accountable to different things. For example, quick little story about my first year of teaching. I remember we had, I think it was a district social study test. And we got the scores back, and I looked at it, and only 30% of my kids passed. Up to that point, about 60% of my kids passed the test, which wasn't great, but it wasn't there. Oh my goodness, the school wasn't a high performing school. 60%, it was okay, I guess. Okay, so 30% of the kids passed. It's literally the only thing that kept me from crying that day was the fact that we had a staff meeting like shortly thereafter, so I had to kind of pull myself together. I was like, I made the decision at that moment that it would never happen again. But at the same time, I had to self-assess. It wasn't about like it just ain't gonna never happen again. No actions follow this. There had to be actions that follow that statement. Okay, so I had to evaluate what I was doing. I was like, okay, I still move a little fast, but I was like, I got to slow down a little bit how I teach. All right, that was thing number one. And I know a student came to me and she showed me like where I was showing them how to do area model for math, and it was just a jumbled mess. I was like, I was actually teaching y'all this way. And then I know I was talking to my campus principal, and I was like, hey, the kids need to just study, and the principal was like, have you model studying? I was like, they were fourth grade, they're supposed to be able to study, and other teachers were like, nah, not really. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm just like, all those things were just really just building. And I could think that particular year, my kids ended up doing well on the next set of benchmarks. And then you move into, I think it was February. And I know it was just one day in class. I've always had this sixth sense. I was teaching and I was just like reading. The kids were kind of like technically doing well for our school at the moment. But they weren't growing, and I knew they weren't growing. I just knew it. I just didn't feel it. So I went to the literacy specialist, who was a phenomenal educator when she was in the classroom. And I was like, hey, can you come in and model a lesson? Like, I just want to see what she do. And she came in and she rocked it. And I was like, whoa, like, I ain't never seen anything like this before. But what I did was able to do, I picked up on a lot of those tips, and she was able to coach me a lot after that. And I started picking up those tips and being able to, I was able to match her energy. I'm a high energy person anyway, so I was able to come in with that same energy in the classroom, and I took off after that. But it was because I was accountable. I say that to say this is for all the other teachers out there. I mean, I know like evaluations and all that stuff be a little bogus. It's just keeping 100, keeping the book with you. But at the same time, you got to be accountable. Like if your kids aren't performing, you got to like stop avoiding those data talks. You got to go look at it like, why are my kids not doing well on main Why they're not doing on this specific concept? And what can I do to improve them? Don't just look at it, they're doing bad because they don't get the concept. Think about what you're doing to teach it to them. What are the methods you're using to try to get them to grasp that concept? You got to start thinking about what you're doing. Why can't you got to make sure they can access that information? Some kids can't read. Some kids are auditory. Some kids are visual. Some kids are kinesthetic learners. What are you doing that are potentially why they're not getting the concept? You can't just sit and go through a book and like, oh, they don't get main idea. Like, of course they don't get it. Like they not engaged with the story that they're reading. So you got to like think of why they're not performing. What is going on? Why they're not performing? Are they just not motivated? Or are they going so fast? What is it? You have to evaluate those things from the teaching standpoint to make in that context. All right. So if your kids are acting up and you have a lot of behavior issues, first you got to evaluate what's your relationship like with your students. I always say, like, if you have a good relationship with your students, you cut out half the fools you begin with. That's keeping 100 with you. So I mean, you got to look at that too. So I mean, you have to build relationships with your students. So then you can start evaluating what are the other little reasons why the kids are misbehaving. So you have to still look at yourself. All right. So the thing is, the most important thing with that, teachers, is, and as people say it, but people don't really do it. You got to stop looking around the room and look in the mirror. Sometimes it is you. Sometimes, hey, kids take on the personality of leaders. So if your kids are lazy, probably means you lazy. Keep them buck with you. All right. So if your kids don't want to perform, probably means you don't want to perform. If your kids are one way, hey, I can be real with you. Like my kids tend to be very hyper. Like I have some difficult ways sometimes, and then at the same time, like, but my kids are leaders. They want to learn. They're excited about learning. So they take on the personality of leaders. You got to think about what are your kids doing? Are they taking on your personality? You got to really look at that. So they feed off your energy. If your kids are bullying, are you a bully? Hey, I'm just keeping real 100 with you. Also, here's the thing for my kids though. All right, you always talking the teacher picking on you, or they mean to me, they that. Think about what you're doing. Are you actually doing your work in class? Are you disrupting? Are you bullying other students? Are you doing the things you're supposed to do first? Now, it's one thing you're doing the things you're supposed to do, and the teacher's messing with you. But if you're not doing the things you're supposed to do, that's one of the core rules of my classroom. Rule number 9 is do what you're supposed to do. If you do what you're supposed to do and your teacher still messing with you, then maybe you have a problem. There's some other things going on. But if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you can't really say the teacher's picking on you. They might just be doing their job and making sure you meet their expectation level. And then just going with it. I always tell kids they're supposed to honor their parents. But you might say, oh, my parents didn't mean to me. But are you thinking about all the phone calls they get from the teacher? Or seeing your poor grades and worrying about your future? Are you thinking about those things? Like, you really have to think about that when it comes to a parent. Some of you may be just being raised by mom or dad. Do you think of the stress that it puts them under, that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing? They do put food in your back, clothes, and all those things. But at the end of the day, you think about the stress they might be under. I almost had a student whose mom couldn't even work because she was always dealing with phone calls, dealing with him. He had been put out of multiple schools. So do you really just think about all that? So you really have to think about that before you start talking about what your parents are doing, someone else is doing. Look at what you're doing. All right, guys, I just really want y'all to understand that. Like, because once you become accountable, watch how your whole life change. In school, watch when things change. Watch how people react to you change when you're accountable. Because, to be honest with you, most people in the world ain't accountable. They're not accountable to their actions. They don't want to say that they did something wrong. Most people don't do that. Like, just in reality, once you do that, it's just not about admitting you're wrong. It's about correcting after the fact. So, guys, I'm going to say I love y'all, man. Be accountable, guys. And as always, man, I love y'all. Peace out.